Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about order of operations. First, I'm going to deal with any grouping symbols. We're going to represent that with a G. We're going to talk about grouping. Now grouping can be seen in many different ways. We can represent them by using parentheses. Sometimes we'll see brackets. Sometimes we have these squiggly braces. Some more uncommon grouping symbols include fraction bars. If I have something on top and something on bottom, let's say 3 plus 2 and 5 plus 7, even if there is not any parentheses around any numbers, this fraction line automatically should tell you that there's imaginary parentheses around the top and around the bottom. So fraction bars act as a grouping symbol. As do square root signs. Anything inside the square root is automatically in parentheses, as well as exponents. If I have 5 and then in an exponent 2 plus 1, I automatically have parentheses around my exponent. Second, I'm going to deal with exponents. And again, exponents are anything that look like 5 to the power of, and there's an exponent here. And we can say 2. Those are what we're going to deal with second. Next, we're going to deal with multiplication and division. Now, the special thing about multiplication and division is one is not more important than the other. Oftentimes we think multiplication is more important. What is important is that I move left to right in my multiplication and division problems. Left to right. Next, and I'm going to slide this down a little bit. Next, we will deal with any addition or subtraction. And again, this works the same as multiplication and division, and I'm going to work on them left to right. Whatever is coming first as I go this way. All right, now that we have those written down, let's go ahead and complete some example problems. So when I look at the problem, I'm going to first look for any grouping symbols. There are no parentheses. I do see an exponent, but there's only one thing in my exponent, so there is nothing to simplify there. And I'm going to move on to my next step, which is exponents. And here's my exponent, so I'm going to simplify this portion right here, and I'm going to bring everything else down. I'm going to have 12 plus 2 times, now what does that 5 squared become in my calculator? 5 to the power of 2 is equal to 25. So 25 minus 1. Now as I'm looking at this, I'm going to say no more exponents. I'm going to move down, and I see that I have either multiplication or division. This problem only has multiplication, so I'm going to deal with that portion next. Positive 2 times 25. And here we go. I'm going to bring everything else down. 12 plus, what is 2 times negative 25? That's 50. Minus 1. Now that all multiplication and division is gone, I'm going to work on my addition and my subtraction, and I'm going to go left to right. So in my calculator, I'm just going to type it in 12 plus 50 minus 1. And I have a total of 61. Fantastic. Let's move on to the next one. Every time I'm going to start up here at the top for any grouping symbols, and I do see one this time. So 8 minus 6 is in my parentheses. I'm going to start with that. 8 minus 6 is a grand total of 2. And I'm going to bring everything else down, including my parentheses. So 2 to the third power divided by 4 minus 12. See, I'm just bringing everything straight down. Next step, there's no more grouping symbols. I'm going to move on to exponents. And I do have an exponent here still. So I'm going to simplify this. 2 to the third power, and I'm typing this into my calculator right now. 2 to the third power is equal to 8. 8 divided by 4 minus 12 plus 5 times 2. And again, I'm going to continue and make I'm going to go down to the next level, multiplication and division. Make sure you go left to right. So see how I have a multiplication and a division here? I'm going to go this way and start with the division. So 8 divided by 4 is 2, minus 12 plus 5 times 2. Now, not 5.2, whoops, 5 times 2. Now I'm going to simplify that. 5 times 2 is 10, and I'm going to bring everything else down, including all my signs. 2 minus 12 plus 10, and I'm going to go left to right. So 2 minus 12 plus 10 in my calculator equals a grand total of 0. And that is my final answer. Next example. It has a fraction. Make sure you've got a scientific calculator. If there's not a scientific one there, I will be embedding a scientific calculator into the Canvas assignment page. In order to do fractions on my scientific calculator, remember the fraction button is this A, B over C button. So here I go. I'm going to make sure when I type this in, whenever I have a negative, I need to make sure I include those parentheses in my typing in the calculator, because it does matter. So negative 1/4, I'm going to close the parentheses, to the power of 3 equals, and that is a big long number, and I'm going to change that to a fraction by clicking my fraction button. So I have negative 1/64 plus 3 divided by 2. Remember, I'm going to work on my grouping symbols on top and then bottom, so I'm still working on my top, and I'm going to type into my calculator negative 1/64 plus, plus 3 equals, and this says 2 and 63 over 64. So 2 and 63 over 64. And I'm going to be dividing that by 2. So one super nice thing in your calculator, you can just click with this still on your screen, divided by 2. And that is going to equal 1 and 63 over 128. Now, your calculator might give you something different, or you might not have that nice fraction button. So if that's the case, you can convert things into decimals and still use things as decimals. All right, moving on to our next example. Let's slide this down again. There we go. I have this example right here. Now again, I have this big fraction bar, so it's separating it into a top and a bottom. That means I need to simplify the top in this top group, and then I'm going to simplify the bottom group. So if there's ever two sets of parentheses, I just deal with them separately, one at a time. So let's start with the top. If I'm simplifying the top, I am going to start by looking and seeing that I am going to do exponents first. Now I'm going to type in parentheses negative 7 and close my parentheses and squared, and that equals 49. So I have 18, bring down the plus, 49 minus 7. Now I do want to point out one thing. If I don't include those parentheses, notice what happens. Negative 7 to the power of 2. Okay, and it's negative 49, but I got a positive 49. Those parentheses do affect what answer you get, so make sure you always put them on if you have a negative number inside of the parentheses. All right, I'm going to go ahead and continue to simplify the top of my fraction. I'm going to go ahead and simplify the top of my fraction, and I'm just going to type that into my calculator, because I have no more multiplication or division to simplify. So 18 plus 49 minus, whoops, I didn't mean to type, divide, minus 7 is equal to 60. And now let's go ahead and simplify the bottom. So if I'm looking at the bottom, I'm going to start with my exponent. 9 minus 20 divided by 2 to the second power. Notice there's no parentheses. I don't need to include the parentheses. And I'm going to write that down, 9 minus 20 divided by 4 plus 16. I'm going to look at this line again. There is a division symbol, no multiplication, so I'm going to do that next. 9 minus, now I'm going to do the 20 divided by 4, and I'm going to get 5. Now sometimes I have people say, Ms. Johnson, can I just do negative 20 divided by 4? Is that okay? Yeah, that's just fine. But notice when I use the negative 20 divided by 4, and my answer is negative 5, my negative still shows up. Plus 16, and since I'm down just to addition and subtraction, I'm going to type that into my calculator. 9 minus 5 plus 16 equals a grand total of 20. So my new fraction is 60 over 20, which I can now divide, now that all the parentheses are gone, and I have 60 divided by 20, which is 3. Great. One last example, and this one's a little bit trickier, so make sure you keep watching. Last example, I'm going to, again, it's another fraction problem. I'm going to deal with the entire top, and then I'm going to deal with the entire bottom. And it actually doesn't matter which one you simplify first, which set of parentheses you simplify first. I can simplify this bottom one first. It looks easier. I'm going to start there. So I notice that there's an exponent. So in my calculator, 4 to the second power, or if you know what 4 to the second power is, don't use your calculator, 16 minus 5 times 2. Now some of you may have already been like, I can already simplify. I know I need to times that next. 5 times 2. You're welcome to skip a step occasionally if you can see how to simplify 2 and 1. Sometimes that's not great if you simplify something before you're supposed to. But here I can see that I need to do this before the subtraction. And now on the bottom, 16 minus 10 is a grand total of 6. And now I'm going to work on the top. So here we go. On the top, I have this big thing. I am going to start with what's inside of my parentheses. I'm going to put my negative. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to still leave my parentheses. 10 minus 20 is negative 10 to the squared power minus 14. Now, in other cases, people said negative, and negative is a positive. Because this is in parentheses and it's being squared, I'm going to have to deal with that negative 10 separately. So here I go in my calculator, negative 10, and I'm putting it in parentheses just to be careful. Squared is 100. So I have negative, parentheses, 100 minus 14. Well, negative times 100 is negative 100 minus 14, and I'm going to type that in my calculator. Negative 100 minus 14 is a grand total of 114. Still over 6. Negative 114 over 6. And I'm going to do that last division in here. Remember, something nice about your calculator, since it already has negative 114, if I just click divide by 6, this answer is saying they're going to use that number. So I don't need to type in negative 114. And I get my grand total of negative 19. That's my answer. If you have any questions about order of operations, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks.